Hi friends, it's Grace and welcome back to another video. This is going to be my super late December wrap up for the year of 2022, obviously. The year that we left behind like 3.5 weeks ago, but I've just been behind on things. So I'm not quite at Alan levels of wrap up delays yet, but this is a lot later than I normally do my monthly wrap up. However, I did finish the year on, I would say, a pretty good note, especially because of one certain series that I will talk about. But in the month of December, I finished 5 books. I did have a couple of carryovers into January that I was reading in December, but I always count books in the month that I finish them, like month or year, however you want to look at it, just because that's the easiest for me in terms of keeping track. So my December reads were 2 fantasy, 2 horror, and 1 romance, which is a pretty atypical like composition for me. Usually it's not as much horror and more fantasy, but it was still a good month. So among those books, I had 1 3-star, 2 4-stars, 1 4.5 star, and 1 5-star. So pretty good still. And when I go through these and talk about them, I'm just gonna go through them from lowest rated to highest rated. And 3 stars was not a bad 3 stars. So it's on the whole pretty positive month. So first up, my 3-star read for the month of December was The Holiday Swap by Maggie Knox, which is actually a Canadian author duo writing under this name. And I forget what both of their names are, but they're right here in the back of the book. So we have Karma Brown and Marissa Stapley making up this writing duo. So this was a very like sweet holiday romance. I read it right around Christmas, and this is 3 stars just because it's sort of like one of those books that you read in a day, sort of like a comfort food type of thing. I enjoyed it, but I didn't take too much like emotional connection away from it, really. Basically, this is the story of 2 twin sisters from a small town in California, and both of them are like very skilled bakers. One of them is actually a celebrity baker who co-hosts a show, and they're doing like a Christmas special. And the other sister is at home like running the family bakery, has taken, not exactly taken over from her parents, but they're trying to kind of like push their parents towards retirement, like in terms of they need to trust that their daughters are ready to take on some responsibility off of their shoulders. Not in a like malicious pushing their parents towards retirement way. That'd be a little bit more of a wrinkle for a really sweet book like this. But basically we have the celebrity baker sister gets an injury, hits her head, and loses her sense of taste and smell. So she's not going to be able to do this like shooting and filming of a TV show. She asks her twin to swap places with her and do the show for her. And so they both basically, once they've swapped identities, are like meeting guys and like kind of forming these, they're each forming like a romantic connection, except that like each of these men like thinks that they're actually the other sister, and it's sort of just like this cute, like, I don't know, miscommunication. Like it never goes too deep in the sense that there's never like a deep sense of betrayal. Like I think it's important that this book takes place over the course of like a week, so it's not like things are getting too deep and serious into these relationships and then it's suddenly like, oh, I wasn't actually who I said I was. But the whole thing's kind of like a whirlwind. It's cute. It's got the like holiday cheer vibes, like very much what's the word I'm looking for? Like holiday activities are the backdrop of this, and it was just nice. Like, I don't know, like I said, not too many strong feelings on it, but I would recommend it as a cozy Christmas read. Next up, like I said, I had 2 4-star reads, and they were actually both of the horror books that I read this month. So that's switching gears slightly from the cozy romance. But the first of these, since they're both 4 stars, they're in no particular order, is Misery by Stephen King, one of the Stephen King books that I've had my eye on and have wanted to read out of his works. And so this was actually the patron pick for my Patreon in December. December. And so I've kind of changed the way that I'm doing my Patreon now. It's not so much of a thing anymore as it was, but this was my last like patron selected book for the month of December. And so I had wanted to read it anyway. It was just that motivation to pick it up in that month. And I enjoyed it. So the beginning was a little bit slow for me, and I sometimes don't completely jive with Stephen King's writing style, but then I find that once I get into it, I'm completely fine. I think that the problem is, like, if I'm not as engaged and everything's not flowing together for me, like his writing style with the plot, then it can take me out of it a little bit. But I think it was around the 80-page mark in here where it really picked up for me, and I was definitely on board. And from that point, it took me a lot less time. Like, this book is 330-ish pages long, and it probably took me an equivalent amount of time to read the first like 80 to 100 pages as it did the second 200. So it really ramped up, and I really thought that like the tension was great in here, and the like sense of foreboding and the sense of like being trapped and some like helplessness and like very much rooting for the character, and it was just like, I don't know, I really liked the way that this all came together, and I thought that the ending was very appropriate, basically. Like it was, I mean, this is only my second Stephen King, but I think I liked the ending of this better than the ending of Pet Sematary. So even though I've only read 2, I can say that this is my favorite Stephen King ending that I've read so far. So yeah, it's 4 stars for me just because I did have that trouble getting into it at the start, but I can see why like this is so popular, and I really did like it. Okay, so next up, also a 4-star, and the other horror that I read in December is My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. And to be honest, this may have been higher than 4 stars. It might have been 4.5 if it weren't for the very, very ending. And not like the climax ending, but after that. So okay, first of all, this book is about our main character, Jade. She is sort of like an edgy, like goth, like horror movie loving teenage girl who really doesn't feel like she fits in her town, and really doesn't feel too like charitable towards the people of her town. And she is like an expert on slashers, and she becomes convinced that a slasher is coming to their town. And so this is sort of like a psychological development of her seeing the signs. Like I think this is a really, really cool example of a narrator where you're not entirely sure whether they're unreliable or not. Like, you don't know whether you can trust the way that Jade interprets events, the way that she sees them. And there are deaths that occur in this town, and this book has a really, really chilling and amazing opening scene, but you aren't sure what's happening. And I think one of the main points in this book just is like that perspective, and it's used really, really well all the way through. And one other thing that I love is that interspersed throughout between every single chapter is basically, like, I don't know whether it's considered epistolary format when they're not letters, but they're kind of letters. It is Jade writing like school assignments for her history teacher to hand in, but they're all about slasher films and like final girls and like this education that she's basically trying to give to her history teacher in the guise of like pretending that her writing about slasher films is her writing about what they were supposed to be writing about in history class. And it really gives you an insight, I think, into the character and her relationship with this like male figure in her life as opposed to her relationship with her father. And I think that it's like perfect for the tone of the book. And I don't know, there are a lot of things that I really loved about this, and I think that Stephen Graham Jones is a really, really phenomenal writer, but I love, like, the crux of my rating is that I love some falling action and resolution at the end of a book. I really think that it's rare that a book can end really, really abruptly, and that I will be happy about it and satisfied with that conclusion. And so this like, I thought there was potential for it to end in a way that I was happy with, but, and I know this is a series, like there's gonna be more to it, but it ended in an absolutely unhinged way. Like, the entire book up to that point, you would have no way of predicting what is gonna happen in the final sequence of this. And there is a message to it that is relevant to the rest of the book, but I simply can't comprehend, like, I don't know, for a lot of the climax, I was totally on board. I really liked what was happening, and then the ending happened and I was like, oh, what the hell? Like, so that's basically why. So I still think that Stephen Graham Jones is a really, really great writer, and I am most likely going to pick up the next book in this, I think it's a trilogy, which comes out this year. I don't remember when, but it's called Don't Fear the Reaper. And I am looking forward just in general to reading more from him, because I do own The Only Good Indians as well. And I don't know, I still have mostly positive things to say about it. It was just very, very jarring at the end. So if you're somebody who, like, doesn't mind that, I would recommend this. And honestly, I would recommend this for fans of just like horror. And I know that I'm sure a lot of people have already read it, because I'm like gonna be later coming to horror books since I don't really read them. But I don't know, it was still really good. It's just some mixed feelings. Now, finally, we have the massive undertaking of the month of December, and the biggest reason, no pun intended, why I only finished 5 books, but it was very worth it because 2 of them were The Golden Fool and Fool's Fate by Robin Hobb, the second and third books in the Tawny Man trilogy. And so I read these with Ben from Overly Average Ben, Ben from like Discord, and from our Robin Hobb read-alongs that we've been doing since Live Ship. And for this, actually, it was just for Fool's Fate, I think, or was it also for Golden Fool? Angela from Literature Science Alliance joined us. I have such a terrible memory that I can't even remember whether it was just one book that she read with us or not, but it was really, really fun, and I already miss like buddy reading these because I really love the way that we do it. Basically, the way that we do this is we'll read like 3 chapters a day, sometimes a little bit more or a little bit less, depending, like obviously every single day, like if someone's busy, they might not be able to read the chapters, but it keeps a pretty good pace. It gives you like a lot to discuss, but also not an overwhelming amount, and it's like, it works for us in terms of keeping everyone on relatively the same pace, and like using Voxer and using voice notes is just such a great way. Like with Robin Hobb, there's so much to dig into, like so much emotion and so much like complexity that she adds to the characters and like the politics and the worlds and like unraveling the mysteries. And I didn't even say this, but Golden Fool was 4.5 stars and Fool's Fate was 5 stars. So now that we have that out of the way, this really was a phenomenal series that we like obviously loved because we wanted to jam 2 of the books into 1 month instead of waiting for January to finish it, because we were all really, really enjoying it. I know that Golden Fool had some low points, and I know that I think that I may have enjoyed it the most, because I know that other people had some issues with it, and I did too, but it was more like characters infuriating you type of issues rather than like issues with Robin Hobb's writing necessarily, but we had some really interesting discussions about like the intent of characters' actions and like what exists inside the world and how they're acting and stuff, and how like their actions have repercussions on other characters. And there was less of that in Fool's Fate, but Golden Fool was a little bit of a filler book. Like it's not exactly like, things still happened in terms of a lot of character moments and like character lows, but Fool's Fate was the actual kind of plot, like the aim of the series started to happen really in Fool's Fate, and there were still a ton of great character moments and character content, because this, as opposed to My Heart is a Chainsaw, had like the best falling action ever. Like, I was having such a good time with the resolution after the climax, and just getting to like resolve things, spend time with the characters, like reflect with them. It was phenomenal. So that definitely goes a long way to like giving Fool's Fate a higher rating than Golden Fool, but the entire trilogy was amazing. You'll notice I'm not saying a lot about the plot really or anything specific, given that this is the third trilogy in Realm of the Elderlings, but the same strengths that Robin Hobb displays like throughout most of her books are just pretty much still there, and it's why I love her. And I think that one of the fun things about getting further into these series is that you can really see her world coming together. She's revealing it to you bit by bit, series by series, and you start to see those connections to other books and to other geographical places in the world, and that's something that's always really satisfying for me to see come together as you get farther into any series, and she does those connections really well. And so while you don't necessarily need to read like, I don't know, Farseer first or Live Ship first, by the time you get to Tawny Man, you definitely see the connections to both of those prior series. So I think it's important to have read them, or else you like won't understand relatively significant parts of like what's happening now and why things are emotionally impactful or important to the plot going forward. So I don't know, it's like, if you watched my favorite books of 2022 video, Robin Hobb is featured pretty prominently there for good reason, and this was a part of that. And so it was it went a long way to making December a really good reading month. So with that said, those are the 5 books that I read in the month of December, which is, like I said before, it's a while ago now, but a few of them certainly left their impact on me, and it was a good reading month. So that is going to be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Please like if you liked it, subscribe if you'd like to see more content from me. I post new videos on most Mondays and Thursdays, and as always, I will have my joint Discord with Ben and my socials linked in the description below if you're interested in any of that stuff. And I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye!